And 10 meaningless collectibles. While yes, the collectibles are fun things that you can go around and steal all over the PizzaPlex, I think that a DLC adding more collectibles that don't have any significance is a pretty bad idea. There are plenty of difficult to find collectibles already, so if you're to make more in a DLC, I think that they should actually have some form of meaning with those collectibles. Whether they're references or Easter eggs, it doesn't really matter, but we definitely need some form of meaning, because getting all the normal collectibles that in reality are stealables, if you ask me, is already quite the task, especially if you keep the whole like you're unable to save after getting Roxy's eyes thing, because that is just some serious bad juju if you ask me, although nobody really has asked me. We all hate the mechanic, alright? And at 9, repaired animatronics. Considering how the whole point of the game was to destroy these animatronics so that we'd end up wasting enough time for the doors to open, repairing the animatronics in this DLC for whatever reason it might be would be a huge disservice to the game. Like, yeah, you might need them for something, but if that's the case, you shouldn't have to have them repaired. Plenty of different sections in the game use both destroyed and repaired animatronics depending on how you've completed the story. If you destroyed Chica and then go to Phaser Blast after the ending, you can end up having to dance around a destroyed Chica, so forcing repairs on these animatronics just destroys what we spent the entire game doing. We did it illegally, but also considering how the game is past 6 AM and will always be 6 AM no matter how long you play at that point, you can be fairly certain that they would not be able to repair the animatronics in time. And it ain't bug fixes. Okay, now don't get me wrong, this game is in dire need of some serious bug fixes, but I, along with I'm sure everyone else, would be absolutely furious if those bug fixes came in the form of a DLC. At least if the DLC is a separate purchase that we have to make like the Help Wanted DLC was. If I have to pay for bug fixes that I should have already had, there's going to be a problem, because if a game is released unfinished, there needs to be a remedy to that in the form of updates. Easy updates that fix the major issues with the game, like I don't know, falling through the world. And if there is a paywall to get those updates, I think I know a couple of websites that can help me get around that, because in all honesty, that's incredibly messed up if the bug fixes will only be in the DLC. But I don't think Steelwool would do that. I just get worried since they're still working on updates but also still talking DLC. And at 7, Daycare. The Moondrop Daycare section was certainly a great bit of fun, despite the constant darkness and the demon chasing you. It was strangely like my mind, actually. However, while this section was certainly fun and one of the best moments of the game, I don't really want to repeat it. It took me so long to do properly the first time, so any reason to have to go back into the daycare, whether it be because we dropped something or whatever other reason they'd come up with, I don't want to do it. Do not send me back to the goddamn daycare, or I swear to God. Like, it was fun the first time, but I'd rather not spend another 3 hours nearly ripping my dick off trying to find another generator. I don't want to deal with the daycare attendant at all, if that's possible. Just the fact that the first line as Moondrop is naughty naughty boy, it puts me on edge, especially for a kid who's like the size of a 4-year-old. Not in real life. I'm taller than a 4-year-old, I hope. Like, okay, look, it's just setting off all kinds of radars, alright? And at 6, post-credits. While yes, I said another ending would be nice in another video, having any post-credit scenes should really be saved for the next full game, especially since we don't know where the next IP owner will be going with this series. So I'd like to leave the endings where they are, and any DLC should take place before the game starts or after 6 AM hits, since 6 AM seems to be the most logical time for any serious change to happen, since employees would be starting to come back and prepare for the day. So things like additional areas or attractions opening would make sense. Basically, the daytime protocols would activate. Or it could be like a DLC starts if you go to the main stage when Vanessa asks you to when you're trying to leave. When you're trying to get to the main doors while the daycare attendant's chasing you and she says, oh, come to the main stage. Yeah, that could do that. And it could start like a whole new story kind of mission with, wait for it, autosaves. That would be amazing. Someone in a recent video also mentioned that there's unused Freddy voice lines that say that the stations got hacked. However, firstly, that means nothing since it's unused, therefore it's not canon. Secondly, it still makes no sense, because if he's able to escape, why have the saved stations? Like, why hack them at all? It doesn't really make sense unless you want to screw with the business, since in the world of the game, the save stations do nothing for Gregory. They only help us in the game sense. Do you get it? Halfway through into number 5, post-game. Honestly, I'm fine with the DLC taking place post-game, and it would make the most sense. However, I don't want to see a post-game DLC where you can't save the entire time. And that's what I fear the most when it comes to Security Breach, okay? If we're getting a whole new section of the game, basically a new game in and of itself, we'd better be able to save throughout it, which Steel Wool might see as actually compromising the intended difficulty of the post-game, so I don't know what they're going to do. I had to put it out there again. If this is going to be some post-game DLC, you need to make sure that saving is allowed, even if the save spots are only available like in the sections pertaining to the DLC while the DLC is active or something like that, because otherwise it's going to be too much of a pain in the ass to actually get through. And I don't know how many people will actually want to play it if it's that way. Rather, they'd probably end up just wanting to watch someone else play it, which is fine if the person you're watching play it is me. And at 4 questions. When we get this DLC, if they do end up making one at least, I don't want to be left with more questions than we had at the end of the main game, alright? Scott loves to clear things up from previous games with the next one, and a DLC is a perfect way to do this. And he did this with FNAF VR and its Curse of Dreadbear DLC, with confirming that Glitch Trap was meant to be Afton. So, if we come out of this DLC with more questions than answers, while in typical FNAF fashion, I'm still not going to be a happy overnight camper. Like, bro, can you just like throw us a bone once and tell us like one of the big mysteries we have, or give us answers for that, like how Gregory and Vanessa know each other seemingly, or if Gregory is a robot, or who Client 46 is. Please, just give me that instead of questions, and I'll be happy. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, time travel. Seeing a giant ball pit for the first time in an actual FNAF game that wasn't when you had to buy it interests me, alright? Specifically because of the Fazbear Frights books and Into the Pit and the story of the same name. Since in that story we see Oswald, who could travel between 2011 and 1985 by jumping into a ball pit in his local pizzeria that actually used to be a Fazbear joint. And honestly, that book being released and then the ball pit appearing in the FNAF game does not seem like a coincidence. So it could be possible that we see time travel in this DLC, especially if they wanted to relate it back to the books and the Fazbear Frights books. However, this would be an absolutely terrible idea. Okay, I've once said that this could be a great way to change between in-game times. However, the whole day and night mechanic isn't a thing in the game. So unless they introduce that with this time-traveling ball pit, or one of the ball pits being able to time travel, it would be a bit much. And honestly, it would probably ruin the DLC, if that's a thing. So if you're gonna make like a day as well as a night, then okay, I'll allow it, but if you're not introducing that, there's no point in a time-traveling ball pit. And ultimately, in at number 2, more PizzaPlex. Okay, so the PizzaPlex is already pretty damn big. It's confusing to get the places you need to go. There are a couple shortcuts, but it is still difficult to get to certain places. I personally end up going probably the most complicated ways to get back to the main atrium and the like, because I can't be bothered trying to find my way around. But going through the Rockstar row vents to get down to parts and service through Roxy's room is the one way I know works. However, adding more sections to the already confusing PizzaPlex could do more harm than good, and when it comes to something like this, you can't really add a different world space unless you make the story way too complicated. With something like Skyrim, the Forgotten Vale and Solstheim makes sense. However, with FNAF, you can't really have a whole separate area because the whole game takes place in a PizzaPlex and not a specific province of a whole established world. So, more PizzaPlex, while potentially making sense, could end up being counterproductive, especially depending on where we need to go. Maybe use spaces that we've already been in, or add fast travel. And finally, in at number 1, cash grab. The biggest concern that I have with a Security Breach DLC is the possibility of the DLC just really being a cash grab. And while most DLCs could be considered cash grabs, it's really a risk with FNAF in general, especially being new to DLC, like they only have had like one. And like previously mentioned, the confines of the PizzaPlex. If it was something simple like mini games or multiplayer possibilities, I could see it, but the game was already $50. Add on to that the $25 or so that the DLC would run for, and you have the price of some of the highest end games, especially new games. So if there isn't enough content to justify that, I'd be worried about the future for the series, especially since we don't really know the motivations of the person taking over next, because we don't know who is taking over next. It's a slippery slope with a cash grab DLC, and honestly, if there's not enough content or mystery to justify the purchase, I'm probably not going to be purchasing it. despite being a FNAF tuber at this point. Yeah, that's what my life has come to. God damn. In a 10 FNAF ARG. This was brought up in an older, or kind of like a recent but not the most recent MatPat FNAF theory, and people were starting to suggest that actually like an ARG would be involved in the DLC. The basic idea being that the FNAF Fazbear Frights books were originally going to have an ARG that Scott ended up cutting out for whatever reason, and then released as part of the Felix the Shark book as the extra couple stories. But I'm here to tell you that that's probably not real. All right, Scott has said on multiple occasions that he doesn't want to cross the line between fact and fiction, and that he wanted to keep these two worlds separate. Probably because, you know, FNAF relates so closely to Chuck E. Cheese. And that's also why he would have never made a real location. Or at least he didn't until the announcement, or I guess the discovery of the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza delivery service, the digital restaurant delivery service in the works since at least January of 2021. So yeah, maybe it's more accurate than we thought. In a 9 Into the Pit. This is crazy, I will admit, okay? It's most definitely not the case, but I just want it to be real, okay? FNAF has already established time travel as possible in the very first Fazbear Frights book called Into the Pit. Remember that one? It's the title story as well, where Oswald ends up jumping into a ball pit and then somehow leaving 2011 and appearing in 1985 to witness the missing children's incident. Yeah, that story wasn't written for no reason, okay? And where do we see the first ball pit that wasn't in a pizzeria simply meant to lure animatronics around? Oh, would you look at that? The Mega PizzaPlex, I'm just saying, the time travel is already established as canon in the series, and considering how sketchy Gregory is, I wouldn't put him past him from being from the future or something, alright? There are two key indicators that in my mind point to this. The therapy disc, where the therapist calls Client 46 out on the lies of their home life, and the fact that when Gregory leaves the PizzaPlex in the worst ending, he sleeps in a cardboard box. The therapist in that tape says that 46, who it can still be Gregory, it might be the little girl who was in the poster for this DLC, but if it is Gregory, he has a great home life, okay? But like what they told their previous therapist was a lie. So if that was the case and his home life is great, why is he sleeping in a cardboard box, okay? Like, he says his parents suffered some form of tragedy and he's sleeping in a box, but apparently if he is 46 at least, that's not true. Yeah, maybe because it hasn't happened yet, okay? The tragedy where he most likely loses his parents hasn't happened as of when the game takes place, and that's why he can't actually go home to see them, because then there'll be two Gregorys, and they're like, what? How? In a date, Susie. The girl in the center of the FNAF Security Breach Ruins poster is most likely our player character for this game, but given the blonde hair and the cheek on the poster, could Susie be the FNAF Security Breach DLC main character? Now, your first instinct may be that this is impossible. That was my first instinct too. I mean, like, Susie's been dead since 1985 with the missing children's incident, and she ends up possessing Chica, who is then set free in Happiest Day. But in the original novel trilogy, starting with the Silver Eyes, the Funtime animatronics are described as being injected with Remnant made from the original 5 possessed animatronics, meaning that if Remnant does contain at least part of a soul, that the original 5, despite being set free in Happiest Day, no matter when Happiest Day takes place in the timeline, could still have the slightest bit of spirit form in the main world, since they would have been an Ennard who, at least at this point, is Molten Freddy. I don't think that there is any explanation that could mean that this is Susie's original body. That seems like some supernatural shenanigan Lazarus pit kind of crap, and just seems fundamentally impossible. But could Susie have latched onto a new body? Maybe. And it's 1 year later. With the DLC not releasing until 2023, the question remains of when in the timeline the DLC will take place. Yes, it will take place after the true ending for Security Breach, obviously, but how long after is the actual question. See, with the state of the animatronics, it seems like it could be later on, and like with the release date being 2 years after the release of the original game, it means that it could be linear in a timeline sense. So maybe it would also take place 2-ish years after the ending, or maybe just 1 year, depending on how you look at it. I don't know. But then that would also bring on the question of why Gregory is trapped if it's a year or two later. And then we also have to ask, you know, who is this girl and why is she coming to this abandoned pizza place 2 years later when she is again the size of a 6-year-old and alone? You know, she's not like an urban explorer teen with her friends, so yeah. And while there are theories about it, this one specifically about it being like a year later is from Amanda specifically, but I don't know. We don't know and we won't know until it's released. But hopefully it is right, because I would love to see how Gregory survived for a year. And at 6, Help Me. Very reminiscent of the Same Them mini game from the earlier FNAF games, and I think it was FNAF 2. You can see Gregory's face on the bottom left monitor with the phrase "Help Me" underscore written in big green lettering. This to me seems to indicate that we may have a potential plot idea brewing where we need to save Gregory and Freddy after the collapse of the Pizzaplex. Because I mean, like, we know that Gregory and Freddy are sitting on the hill in the final shot of the true game, and they're also sitting on the hill alone, meaning that if we do end up saving him, our player character is probably going to die in the process. This also means that we won't be playing this game as Gregory, obviously. I mean, I've already talked about it before. But the underscore here could also be like another indication of Gregory being a robot, if you want to look at it like that, which is kind of insane. And it's a bit of a stretch, but I mean, oh well. But it could also just be a reference to a file within the game files, or a file within the DLC files that could contain additional information. But I have no idea if that's true, or if it's just speculation. But given the fact that people think that there's an ARG, maybe a file that is help me underscore, since underscores are primarily used for putting spaces in file names without actually having to use spaces. I don't know, maybe that's something that we should look into when it's released. Maybe it'll have a little bit more info for us. Halfway through into number 5, Justice for Bonnie. Bonnie was missing from a security breach, having been most likely destroyed by Monty, but perhaps getting to investigate Bonnie's disappearance and being able to change how things go with, I don't know, just like the story of Fazbear Entertainment going forward would be an interesting mission. If we were meant to actually like truly investigate it, that is, I guess, like turn maybe at least part of the DLC into a bit of a detective game, I think that would be like a really fun, compelling, and like good side story. I don't know. And from what I've seen, we all want justice for Bonnie, especially since we want Papa Freddy to be reunited with Bonnie, since he seemingly really misses him, considering the dialogue from the first recharge station when Gregory asks him about Vanny, and Freddy says there is no bunny in the Pizzaplex. Not anymore, in a very somber way, but I still don't trust Freddy, so I don't really care. I just want to be a detective like Batman. Plus, I mean, we also don't have any good animatronics this time around to help protect us, since Freddy is trapped, so maybe this will be the way for us to get another guardian, since Freddy's with Gregory. And then there you go, you also get choose your guardian. You're welcome. You can have that one for free. Steel Wool, just please respond to me on Twitter. For level 10. Now, the highest security level access that you can get in the main game is level 8. This just requires you to do every of the like security room mini games. However, with level 8 being the highest that you can actually achieve, it begs the question as to why there are doors with level 10 security. Because if it's impossible to achieve that level, what's the point of giving them a security level at all? I mean, there are doors that are actively locked and don't open at all, that aren't blocked. So like, why not just make the doors that you would have made level 10 just impenetrable? It doesn't seem efficient to me, okay? They could have been saving these areas for this DLC, and they could add maybe 2 more security pass rooms, since like if you end up no clipping past the doors with level 10, there is nothing behind them at all. So I mean, I don't know, it would be nice to get some additional areas in the DLC. These level 10 areas would give us that little extra sense of new content while also expanding the Pizzaplex in a relatively reasonable way, and especially considering how we've now had the place collapse, those level 10 doors still being shut would be a bummer. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, Prisoner. Now, time to get into some theories about our little blondie in the middle, alright? Who is she? I don't know. I doubt that it's Susie, like I've mentioned earlier. But I've mentioned in previous videos how she looks an awful lot like the middle silhouette of the 9 children who have gone missing due to Vanny on the newspaper, and I still stand by that point, okay? I think they look similar. So the most realistic answer that I have is that it's one of the missing children who aren't actually dead, and that they were instead trapped in the building somewhere, much like how Vanny in the first trailer for the game says that she has Gregory's friends here with her. So clearly Gregory must have known the kids that have gone missing, which actually actually would explain why he came to the pizza place in the first place. It doesn't really explain how he never mentions them throughout the whole game, but who knows, okay? Either way, it's a very real possibility that this blonde girl is just a missing kid who, thanks to the collapse, managed to escape containment like an SCP gone wild. But ultimately, in number 2, no more Freddy. It is also possible that Freddy is destroyed, or that he just won't be in this DLC at all thanks to the statue we see on the poster. This poster could be an indication of what happened to Freddy after the PizzaPlex's collapse. I mean, like, it did destroy Chica pretty well, right? So, like, wouldn't it have destroyed Freddy too? Like, yes, he ends up on the hill with Gregory, but, like, I mean, it could be a dream, right? Or maybe it's like a heaven. Maybe they're both dead. That scene could be several years after the actual ending to the game. We could have just seen the end of the FNAF series with that shot, okay? We can't be certain. Or at the very least, the game could be just omitting Freddy, and he won't make an appearance because they couldn't get the voice actor or something, for whatever reason, hence why his statue is destroyed, okay? The thing is in pieces. Have you seen the poster? But why is it? We don't know. There isn't much rubble around it. The escalator walls are less damaged than this statue, so I don't know why the statue would be so destroyed if nothing around it actually seems broken, but you know, I don't know. And finally, in at number 1, Elizabeth Afton. I've mentioned before how both these kids, Gregory and this girl, look like Afton kids. Gregory is very clearly meant to be at least an allegory for crying child, okay? Stripes on the shirt, the age, the relationship with Freddy, it's right there in our faces, okay? Whether you believe he's a robot or not doesn't matter. He's at least meant to represent crying child. And now, look at this girl. While she may be in mostly black and white, she is very clearly blonde, okay? She has pigtails like Baby does, and we all know who Elizabeth was possessing. Yeah, Baby. She's also wearing a skirt exactly like Elizabeth was wearing at the time she ended up getting caught in sister location. And I mean, like, if crying child's 2 stripes are enough for a comparison, then I think that this is more than enough. The outfit is basically the same. And then look at her shoes. The lights are the only thing that has color on them on this character, which is very clearly meant to draw our attention to it, and then those lights are purple and red. Purple representing Afton, obviously, and red could be Vanny. Maybe it's supposed to be Vanny's eyes, but Baby is absolutely covered in red, okay, from her clothes to her hair. Red is all over that animatronic. Plus, if this girl's in black and white, maybe she's just a ghost. Maybe she's not actually real. Maybe it's just Elizabeth's spirit coming after her brother. In at 10, Foxy's return. Foxy was also missing along with Bonnie this time around. However, with the inclusion of Roxy, who seems to be like the Sephora version of Foxy, we didn't really seem to miss them all that much, especially since Roxy also runs hella fast, basically just being a gender-swapped form of the lovable Fox. However, seeing Foxy make a triumphant return could be an interesting concept for a DLC. Maybe he was having a form of like lover's spat with Roxy, and then that's why she keeps telling herself that she's beautiful and the best because Foxy broke her heart or something. I don't know. I don't think that they would do that just because of all the horrific fan art that it would generate. Like, yeah, of course there is already fan art about this, but having it confirmed as canon would make everyone go absolutely nuts. God, I'm actually shaking at the thought of that. That sounds like a horrible idea. Anyway, lots of fans have already modded or put Foxy into the game some way or another, so clearly it's an in-demand idea. And honestly, if we did something like the whole missing animatronics showed up for a full-on battle royale with the new ones, I think that would be epic as hell. Freddy Mech for the win. In at 9, Arcade Conspiracy. That's right, I'm talking about this again. The Arcade Conspiracy gets its name from one of the lore duffel bags that we can find, where we learn that something else seems to be going on here. I'm gonna keep making that joke every single time. Quote from the Arcade Conspiracy note. Exit interview. They are working together, the arcades. They're hiding something. The glitches. Glitch them all at the same time. Then the princess will recognize me. She's testing me. I am not yet worthy. The others are protecting it. Let me stay. I am so close. Just one more night. Please. I can save the princess. Now it's clear that this seems to be referring to the Princess Quest games. However, it doesn't seem like we have to glitch out those arcade cabinets in order to get their ending. We just have to beat them in order from 1 to 3, and then boom, we save Vanny. So what could this really mean? Well, there are 3 other arcade machines that seem to be having mysterious glitches, or there's something wrong with them as well. The Balloon Boy World game that you can find in the secret room in the theater, Chica's Feeding Frenzy, which won't turn off even when unplugged, that you're supposed to be able to find in the bakery, and the Monty Golf arcade game that is, according to its duffel bag, shouldn't be in the mini golf area, but somehow is. However, while you can play both Balloon Boy World and the Monty Golf game, Chica's Feeding Frenzy isn't actually playable. You can only access it using a mod menu that lets you cheat it in from the main menu. So adding in this arcade cabinet could mean that there's something bigger going on here than a simple DLC, which honestly I would love. And currently my my high score is still 14 for Monty Golf, where the lowest score is 13, so still feel pretty good about that. And it ain't VR. I don't care how many of you are against it, I am actively hoping that, like how Help Wanted got a flat screen version, that Security Breach will get a VR version, or port, or whatever you want to call it. Is it likely? No. Do I want it? Yes. This game was pretty fun normally, okay? But in VR, I think that this would be one of the most intense and exhilarating VR games that I've played. Aside from Bladed Sorcery, but that's just because it awoke something within me. Some of the cutscenes would need to be modified, probably by giving us a third-person perspective instead of the normal first-person. But other than that, I think it would be incredible. Like, imagine playing Phaser Blast in VR against Mommy Chica. Bro, all the Vanny simps would let themselves get killed. And then I could have some fun walking around as Freddy, pretending to be invincible and punching animatronics. I really want this, okay? It may be complicated to do, but I'm willing to wait, damn it. But exploring the PizzaPlex in VR is kind of goals. I know that there are like VR chat and rec room maps that let you do this, but they're not the real deal, man. Combine this with some of the other ideas on this list and oh boy, would it be an amazing experience. Whoa, doggies. I know that they said they wouldn't do it, okay, but Scott says a lot of stuff that he doesn't mean, so. And at 7, Secure and Neutralize. Now, the Secure and Neutralize concept comes from Knitter user The Silver Sea, and how they describe it is basically a pacifist route, where instead of playing through the story and destroying the other animatronics, you'd instead be able to befriend them and remove them from the game, basically. At certain points in the animatronic boss fights, you'd be able to choose whether or not you commit to the destruction of the animatronic, and if you choose not to, the pacifist route would start. After choosing not to kill, you'd strategize about how to take the animatronic down, which would already be determined in the story, but like for story purposes you'd have to figure it out. Maybe Freddy would offer a suggestion. Then you'd remove the CPU that Afton is using to control the animatronic out of their back, and the animatronic would reboot. After rebooting, they'd have no memory of what happened, and then you'd be able to lead them back to Rockstar Row and put them in their changing station or green room for the rest of the game. This concept is actually pretty interesting, and if you want to read more about it and get more in detail that I can't actually get into in this video because it's a top 10, the link for this will be in the description if I can remember. If not, yell at me in the comments. And at 6, Daycare Redo. The Daycare Redo DLC concept comes to us from FNAF wiki user Glitched Morals, saying that they came up with a side quest with benefits called the Daycare Redo. Quote from the post, here's how it works. Instead of being pushed out of the slide when attempting to go back into the daycare after being banned, there is an option to talk to the son. Gregory can apologize for breaking the rules and ask if there is anything that he can do to make it up to him. Son will send Gregory on a few missions to do certain things, like bring back a certain item to him or clean up the play structures that he knocked down. They will need access to a cleaning or janitor pass, which can be obtained from a present box. And if Gregory does all of these missions, he will have Son's trust back, which will result in a few benefits. He will have full access to the daycare again, which will have extra secrets and collectibles to actually have the full access be worth it. Play structures are now new hiding spots for hiding from animatronics. You'll have access to a new room that is the daycare storage room. In that room is extra structures and toys that are found in the daycare. Presents and duffel bags will also be in this room. Son will give Gregory a daycare night pass, which will result in the moon no longer chasing Gregory anymore, even when the lights are off. And Son can be interactable, and with him, Gregory can watch different movies in the fast theater, play hide and seek, and other mini games. Honestly, this seems like a pretty solid idea, and actually a pretty interesting one, so good job, Glitched Morals. The link to this post will also be in the description, if I can remember. Halfway through into number 5, multiplayer. Now, with a working PizzaPlex, there comes the idea that doing this with friends would be an amazing time. And honestly, this is one of the things we've been wanting for ages. When a multiplayer FNAF didn't really make sense before, a working PizzaPlex would make the most sense. Being able to explore the PizzaPlex during the day with friends and even random people online would be awesome. And honestly, if this isn't in a FNAF DLC, I'm sure someone's going to make this happen in VR chat or Rec Room or something like that. I mean, like, there's already a mod, but that's where you play as animatronics, and I just want a whole load of kids running around the Pizzaplex, you know, being able to play all the games. However, if this was in the real FNAF game, I think it would be the most beneficial. However, VR chat is a free game that you don't need VR to play, despite what the name would suggest, so it would be better for fans unless this came out as like a free DLC of some sort. Which honestly, considering how the game was released unfinished, a lot, a DLC that fixed things and then actually gives us multiplayer would actually be nice if it was free, especially if it's just fixing issues, okay? Anyway, a multiplayer Pizzaplex would be perfect. In it for daytime mode. Being able to explore the Pizzaplex during the day is something that I think we can all agree we'd love to see. Being able to actually play these games without the ominous threat of death would be a great addition to this game. I want to play laser tag without having to worry about Chica chasing me, okay? Unless she's chasing me in a romantic way because someone wanting me that bad is kind of goals. But for real, the ability to just mess around the Pizzaplex during the day would certainly be fun. No restrictions, just full passes or whatever. Or maybe we have to earn tickets to pay for the passes by playing the various arcade games. I think that would be pretty damn cool. Combine this with the multiplayer mode and this would be crazy. Although I guess multiplayer mode would kind of imply that it's during the day since the story doesn't really allow for multiplayer. So let's just assume the daytime mode would just be you on your own. The single player daytime experience, which sounds like a really bad sitcom. Like not one that's so bad it's good, but just like a bad sitcom. Mostly because of the name. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, BurnTrap. With everything that was left up in the air about BurnTrap's ending, us being unsure whether he's actually dead or if the blob decided to save him, getting to see more of BurnTrap or even more of BurnTrap's story, maybe some explanations as to what happened in between the games, or maybe even some potential backstory to the character of William Afton, would surely be greatly appreciated by the community. If there's anything that I've learned by talking about this series every day for a year, the community doesn't like talking about any theory that isn't what they've already believed to be true, and they'll consider these theories canon and proven despite them not actually being confirmed. So, literally anything getting confirmed about this character would be a win in my eyes, especially if we finally get to see William officially die on screen. You have no idea how much I would love to watch William finally kick that sweet, sweet bucket on screen. Huh. Better than any orange YouTube video ever. But ultimately, in at number 2, Inspector Gregory. Bonnie was missing from security breach, having been destroyed most likely by Monty, but perhaps getting to investigate Bonnie's disappearance and being able to change how things go with the security breach lineup would certainly be an interesting mission. If we were meant to like truly investigate this, turning the DLC into a bit of a detective game, I think that would be a really compelling and fun storyline. And from what I've seen, we all want justice for Bonnie, especially since we want Papa Freddy to be reunited with Bonnie since he seemingly really misses him. Considering the dialogue from the first recharge station at least, when Gregory asks about Vanny, and Freddy says, "There is no bunny in this Pizzaplex, not anymore," in a very somber way. Plus, I mean, I've seen enough animatronic alligator thirst traps on TikTok that I kind of want Monty gone. Yes, it was only the one thirst trap, but it was for Monty, okay? It's rough, man. Well, okay, there was only one for the actual animatronic. There was more for like cosplays of the animatronic, but like, dear God. And finally, in at number 1, Choose Your Guardian. I'm pretty sure you all wanted this, and I'm pretty sure it's the thumbnail for this video. Currently, the Choose Your Guardian concept is the most popular idea for a security breach DLC. Well, at least from ideas that came from fans. The idea behind this was that you'd play through the story again, but this time you'd choose which animatronic would come to defend you instead of Glamrock Freddy. The post on Reddit by user Space Bear suggested Chica and Roxy, with Roxy carrying you instead of hiding inside her stomach. However, unfortunately, I don't think that this idea is very likely. Despite jokes in the Help Wanted DLC that the DLC was not a canon addition to the game and it had no hidden intent or purpose, this was not the case. And we know that the DLC is canon and had hidden intent and purpose. However, this DLC, the Choose Your Guardian DLC, would cause too much chaos to the story to actually work well. It would just make too many things confusing, and there is no way that they would make a non-canon DLC in my mind. But I do like this idea, and I think that it should be a mod. We can probably make it work in some way, I'm certain of it. Like, you'd need the voice lines, but I'm pretty sure there are some fans that would be able to recreate the voice for the mod. Getting the actual voice actors would probably be a little too expensive for a mod, but yeah, unfortunately I don't think this is very likely. But hey, maybe it's a good pun. Well, as far as we can, since the PizzaPlex, or at least part of it, seemingly gets destroyed at the end of the true ending. So, when we choose to stay, is it possible for BurnTrap to have more of an impact? Well, it's not as clear as you might think. See, BurnTrap at this moment is sat in the FNAF 6 pizzeria that's underneath the PizzaPlex, charging in his charging station. However, he only seems to come out of it when ourselves along with Gregory jump down into the final area. So to make this DLC possible, well, we would have to have him wake up for some other reason. Now technically it's unknown if when we drop down Afton ironically wakes up at the same time or if we triggered it somehow, but given that it's FNAF, I'm guessing that us triggering it is more probable and more in line with what the series story was intended to be. So for this DLC to include him, Afton would need to wake up for some other reason, be it maybe a power surge or something that messed with his power supply or potentially gave him a boost that he needed to get out of the charger early. Now that Afton is out of his charger for whatever reason, assuming that that's where the story goes, what could the possible DLC stories be? Well, I'm guessing that BurnTrap would somehow be able to get back into the PizzaPlex, despite Freddy telling Gregory that the elevator would only be good for one trip. But who knows, maybe that's because of Gregory and Freddy's weight combined or something like that. Maybe with just Afton in it, it would be able to make more than one trip, since after all it is how the animatronics were getting down to dig the tunnel in the first place, right? Anyways, Afton probably would get back up and then start roaming around the PizzaPlex, probably corrupting anything that he could. This would probably lead to another ending where we would either defeat BurnTrap in the PizzaPlex or then maybe have to lure him back down into the basement. But in my eyes, in my mind, I think that we should have to lure him down to the parts and service room. Mostly because Vanessa told us to come to the main stage once we got into the elevator when trying to escape after you get Roxy's eyes. But if you listen to Vanessa, then go check the stage. There's nothing there for you. It just seems to be a time waster so that Moondrop has a better chance of getting you. But in my eyes, this seems like more of a game mechanic thing than an in-game thing. Like in the game universe, all he would need to do to catch you is just make it to you instead of waiting until it's exactly 1 hour. So there would have to be some reason that she called you there in the first place, right? Well, maybe it's because that's where BurnTrap was, and now we gotta bring him down to parts and service to dismantle him and end his spree for good. Maybe we can get some main antagonist action where the animatronics roaming the PizzaPlex are instead replaced with the main villains of BurnTrap and Vanny. Kind of like Nightmare Fredbear, Nightmare, or Nightmarion style, since those characters also replaced all of the villains in FNAF 4 when they were out. This would definitely make Vanny and BurnTrap seem more powerful and important than the other animatronics, especially if this only happened once we destroyed all three, since then we would assume that they were kind of tossed aside or forgotten since they didn't really work anymore. And I think that this would also help BurnTrap be more menacing, because honestly, looking at him, this is the scariest design for Afton yet. This is the most terrifying version of Springtrap that we have ever had, and we don't actually have to or get to interact with him directly. We don't have a reason to really be scared of him. He doesn't chase us, he doesn't have any real power over us, we burn him from a distance through monitors while pressing buttons, and he only tries to take control over Freddy instead of coming after us, which is what helped us think of this character as a waste. But having him chase us around the PizzaPlex would be an excellent way of making him more unique and terrifying, especially if periodically he would cause us to be forced out of Freddy while trying to take him over, and the only way that we could save Freddy would be maybe to press another button at a save station, or maybe try to activate a save station or something like that, something that could possibly jam Afton's frequency or signal or something along those lines. Making Afton a bigger villain would definitely be a better way to go in my eyes, because this man was underused and really kind of wasted in this way, especially if they do decide to kill him off permanently, since now he's just sentient code after having his soul burnt out of FNAF 6's fire. But having him chase us around the PizzaPlex and making the Freddy mech useless at times and really just being a horrifying antagonist would really help sell how terrifying this version was intended to be, and something I feel should have been in the base game, since, you know, he's the most iconic character in the entirety of the FNAF series, you know, purple guy, the main killer, something that was teased in the very first trailer and then yet maybe had 5 minutes of screen time, unless you're bad at the game like I am, and then in that case he had like 30 minutes to an hour of screen time. And don't even get me started on how horrible horrible his death was, if that was even a death. Killing this man off screen is probably the rudest thing I think Scott could do to me. Like, I want to see this man, and this man being William, die. I want to be the one who causes it. I want to see the light leave his eyes. I want to see that last bit of code float into the air with his demonic purple eyes and then dissipate. Okay, I want to watch him suffer. It's the least that he deserves. Plus, with BurnTrap and Vanny roaming the PizzaPlex, maybe we could actually figure out what happened to those other missing kids that potentially drew us to the PizzaPlex to begin with. I mean, Vanny says in the first trailer that they're supposed to be our friends, right? Like, I don't know, maybe she got to Gregory's orphanage, or like kind of like raided it with a bunch of animatronics. Man, like a World of Warcraft raid, but with animatronics. I don't know. Like, maybe this is the way that Vanny's room above Phaser Blast would be open for closer inspection without the Phaser Blast ending button. Maybe there's an additional secret room or duffel bag or like a present with some story lore that points to what really happened to those kids, and then we can actually go and try and figure it out. If they were killed maybe, or kidnapped, or used to fuel Afton. I mean, this could be a really good way for the story to really establish itself, since, you know, the game was released unfinished despite being a couple of years late. Maybe something like this was always intended, but since there were so many delays, we had to deal with an underused and hardly terrifying antagonist despite the ability to make him so much more. But then again, maybe I'm just enthusiastic and expecting too much from these games, which may or may not be a bad thing. There we have it, friends. Will we see BurnTrap in the FNAF Security Breach DLC? I honestly think that it's possible, and it would make much more sense than any other character we've talked about. And I hope that we get more with this character, because he's the first version of Afton that actually scares me. Like, if that chased me, I'd actually be scared to play this game. Firstly, based off of what we're expressly told in-game, it could actually be possible. All we really know is that Bonnie ended up going into Monty Golf around 4 AM, and then that was the last place he was seen. Quote from the duffel bag: security report, 12:24 AM. Bonnie is seen leaving his green room in Rockstar Row, heading east towards the atrium. 2:40 AM. Bonnie enters the East Arcade. 4:12 AM. Bonnie enters Monty Golf. That's the last of a repaired Bonnie that we ended up seeing, since in another bag we learned, quote, with Bonnie out of commission, we are making Monty the new bass player. Parts and service has already done the proper adjustments. This could be a good thing. Monty could be even more popular than Bonnie. Which, in combination to the fact that Bonnie was last seen in Monty Golf, suggests that Monty is the culprit behind Bonnie's destruction. Which is odd, in my opinion, because, like, we know Monty loves smashing things, so, like, that's not the weird part about this. My thought is, where was Monty chilling before he moved into Rockstar Row? Like, we don't see any real living quarters in Monty Golf, and the only other animatronics that we see outside of the core 4 is the daycare attendant, who has his own room above the ball pit. So, where could Monty have been staying if not in Rockstar Row? Anyway, if Monty is to blame for the destruction of Bonnie, we could see Bonnie come back in the DLC. But unfortunately, it wouldn't be really to get revenge on Monty, since we see that Monty does indeed face justice. At least, justice if he was guilty for the crimes. And if not, then it was just destruction. There is another theory, however, that could counter this point if it's true. The idea that Glamrock Bonnie's endo was used to create the new body that Afton inhabits in the true ending, BurnTrap. Now, we've covered this in another video, link to that is in the iCard, but in that video we came to the conclusion that the entire endo wasn't used, since the shoulders on BurnTrap aren't wide enough compared to the male Glamrock endos. And the fact that Afton's muscle fibers, or nerves, again, still not quite sure what they are still connected, would prove that it's the old suit. But there are sections where the fibers are blocked, like on the left foot and left arm. Both things that he was missing, or were more damaged at the time, while in his scrap trap form. seemingly suggesting that perhaps these specific parts came from Glamrock Bonnie instead of the whole endoskeleton. Maybe they were the only parts that they could use after Monty had his fun, maybe they cut Monty off from destroying the rest of him, hence why he starts smashing his green room. We're not sure, and frankly the latter is just speculation, but it's still interesting. Originally, I was against the whole Glamrock Bonnie endoskeleton thing because, well, frankly, the body in the suit kind of disproved it for me. But I think I might have found a way to make it work. Like I said, looking at the model, I'm still not 100% sure. But if this was the Glamrock Bonnie endo, again, it would need to have broader shoulders, and actually it would need to be shorter. Unless they're like using the female endo for Bonnie, which wouldn't really make sense, so I don't think that they would, especially if they're gonna give Bonnie shoulder pads. But I mean, like, even if we scale them so they're the same height, the endos, when posed the same way, and I'm comparing to like an actual endo, not the Glamrock Bonnie fan art, they still don't line up. And I mean, there are similarities between the two, of course, but there aren't enough where I can even call this above 50%. There are also issues of, again, the muscles being woven throughout the body. If it was just the head, I would understand, since they could have just put the old head on a new endo body, but with the muscles throughout the rest of the endo, that's too intricate to have been placed there. Even if they were, they would be dangling. They would just be hanging out, unless they had been stuck there, like, with super glue. Because, like, they were deep in there, because, you know, he was shoved full of machine parts. So yeah, if Afton was going to transfer his head to a new endo, it wouldn't come with the rest of the body bits. So yeah, I'm gonna go with they added the arm and the leg on after the fact. But what would that mean for Glamrock Bonnie? Well, it would mean that if decommissioning Bonnie was a part of Vanny's plan to resurrect Afton, there would really be no Bonnie available that you could bring back, since he would really just be decommissioned. And while the other animatronics do come back, losing a leg and an arm is worse than your legs, your eyes, or just being smashed, since he wouldn't really be able to hop around on one leg despite being a bunny, and since he only had one arm, he wouldn't really be able to crawl like Monty does. So, I mean, I suppose the DLC could instead just be replacing Monty with Glamrock Bonnie, but that's achievable with mods, so there isn't really a point to making that a paid DLC, since we would all just opt into modding the game for that experience. Plus, certainly the model they use for Bonnie wouldn't end up being the one added to the mod instead of the current one, so at this point we'd need a solid DLC to actually make it worth it. With that being said, however, Bonnie being decommissioned might actually impact his presence in the game, but not to the story, since the DLC could be, like I've suggested before in other videos, a series of missions that involve us investigating his disappearance, possibly as a favor to Freddy, since he really seemed to miss Bonnie. Like, he was pretty sad when he was saying that there's no bunny in this PizzaPlex, not anymore. That was my Freddy impression. Maybe it would even be because Freddy was already investigating it or something like that, saying that he knows Monty's been giving him side-eye and wanted to know if that Monty would be coming after Freddy next, since after all, Monty is stronger than Freddy, at least until we break Monty's brains in with a giant bucket filled with balls, which is a total hazard, by the way. I mean, like, come on. The giant bucket that we used to crush Monty is such a issue for health and safety for both employees and for customers. Because, like, if a 6-year-old kid with a 4-year-old's body can use it to destroy an animatronic, how safe is it going to be for literally anyone else? Like, what's the point of the bucket anyway? Like, is it supposed to contain water? Because, like, when it falls on Monty, it breaks the catwalk that we're on. And honestly, water, especially in that quantity, is going to be a lot heavier than some ball pit balls filled with air. Seriously, who the living hell thought that this was going to be a good idea? Or like, how have they not gotten fined for it yet? Or like, how have they not fixed it if they have gotten fined? Yeah, there are guardrails on the catwalk, but that doesn't matter if there's a giant bucket that can destroy the catwalk that you're standing on and then cause you to fall to your death. Especially when falling that distance just like severed Monty's legs from his torso. Anyway, sorry, rant aside, maybe once Freddy has Monty's hands, we're able to investigate the rest of what happened to Bonnie. Maybe we get into Monty's green room and then kinda like suss out what went wrong. And no, that was not an Among Us joke, despite me constantly making Among Us jokes about this game because Gregory is sus, he vented. But like maybe in the end, we would find Bonnie's casing with a missing arm and a missing leg, and then we would know for certain that I'm right. Now, do I think that this is going to happen? Really? I'm not sure. Like, a lot of people seemingly want to see Bonnie in this game, so much so that they are replacing Monty using mods, but also the idea for the Choose Your Guardian DLC is also very popular, and perhaps even more popular than the others. However, since we know DLCs to be canon add-ons, I'm guessing that a Bonnie investigation would be more likely than switching up the robot who protects us, since honestly, the whole Bonnie thing has less lore implications in the long run. Having someone other than Freddy protect us just seems like it would be too messy, especially with the fact that we would have to steal the other bits from the animatronics, and if we pick Roxy, then we have her eyes the entire game, which is kind of cheating. But like, you know, you get it? You do understand what I mean here? Like, I like the idea, but it's probably just gonna have to be a mod instead of actual canon DLC, okay? I hate to say it, even though I say it every time I talk about this mod. At 10, Ruin. We know that the main title of the DLC is going to be Ruin. Now, whether this will be referencing my opinion of the series or the actual state of the PizzaPlex is unknown, but based on the poster, it's possibly both, because the PizzaPlex looks absolutely destroyed. The Freddy statue from the lobby is in pieces, and there is plenty of rubble all over the ground, and you can see the walls next to the escalators are actually pretty banged up. It's not clear if this is exactly how the lobby will look, since this is just an illustration, not a screenshot from the game, but it is still possible. They could design the damage around this poster, or they could have taken a screenshot and then had someone illustrate it instead, which is entirely possible. But given that this is going to be released in 2023, I doubt that they have stuff made properly for it. They may still be working out the storyline at this stage. And at 9, Free. The name of the DLC may be Ruin, but I'm damn glad it won't ruin my wallet. Especially when the main game was oddly enough in ruins and still cost me $50. And this was before I started buying cheap frozen meals to feed myself, so I was pretty broke. But honestly, I'm pretty glad that this DLC is free, especially with the amount of mods that are probably going to come from it. And it's also probably an attempted apology from Steel Wool since, like I said, the original game was so busted and unfinished when it originally came out. Did you know that despite being incomplete, the original game uncompressed was 86 gigabytes? That's a bigger game size than Skyrim, for God's sakes. That's around the game size, or like a file size, or maybe even a little more than Grand Theft Auto 5. That's absolutely insane. And now it's around 62 uncompressed, which is nicer, and it's 41 compressed. But still, goddamn, that's a lot for not that big of a game when you really think about it. And at 8, 2023. Yes, as I said earlier, the DLC will not be releasing until 2023, which is unfortunate, but it could actually be a good thing. Firstly, it gives me at least another 8 months of DLC themed content before it actually releases, if it is released in January and then the hype dies down for it. But it could also mean that the DLC will be even bigger and better than any previous one, like adding just a couple of more nightmare animatronics or a couple of more levels. However, this also raises the question of, is this the case, or are they just taking their sweet time because all of this is a free DLC? Like, can we really expect to play something huge for free? I doubt it. Like, the only reason it might be free though is because it's affiliated with Scott. But after Scott stepping down, I don't really know how Steel Wool would handle this kind of thing if they were doing it on their own, so I can't really say for sure. And at 7, Vanny Cam. We can also see 6 monitors on the poster which have multiple images of security cameras and Gregory on them. Across the 6 monitors, there are 4 total images that appear, with the bottom 2 being the odd ones out, and the 4 above that being 2 different images. One of Gregory looking surprised, and another of Vanny looking at the security camera that's glitching out. Very reminiscent of the iconic Bigfoot image that's very blurry, where he's walking like this. And I think that this is actually one of Scott's clever tricks, like how he used the keypad in Sister Location to tell us that Crying Child and FNAF 4 take place in 1983. I think that Scott or Steel Wool is doing the same thing with this poster. By glitching Vanny out on screen, they're showing us that either A, Vanny was the entity that Gregory was talking to that was mentioned in the therapy tapes, or B, that Gregory having his vision glitch out when she is nearby is due to Gregory being a robot. It could be either, but it could also be both, considering how these are both next next to pictures of Gregory looking surprised, and they're on both sides of the screen. 2 pictures, 2 eyes. This is the real 2-eye theory. And at 6, brightness. As always, the first thing you do when you see any FNAF promo art or any image that's related to FNAF at all, you go and brighten it to find more details or maybe even some secrets. And the first thing that I noticed is that there aren't any question marks on this poster. Thank God. But there's also quite a few things that got revealed to me. Firstly, at the top there are actually 2 windows on the poster instead of the one that just seems to show up in the original. These windows also look like they are angry eyes, which could indicate an overarching villain. There are also a very faint set of eyes in the top right corner as well, aside not including the ones on the left that are clearly visible, but the ones on the right could just be an anomaly since they are very faint. And I also see that the girl in the middle doesn't have any color on her aside from her shoes. More on that later. And the floor also cuts off at the bottom, but the rocks on top of them don't. Mostly because at this point the ground has pretty much faded into black, but the rocks would still kind of be visible. But seriously, this girl is in black and white. Halfway through, and at number 5, collapse. One of the big questions we, or at the very least I, had after Security Breach was what part of the PizzaPlex collapsed after the cave-in during the true ending. And it was really up in the air whether it was the entire PizzaPlex or just Roxy's Raceway. I guess they kinda left it that way depending on what they wanted to do. But this poster and the title confirms that the PizzaPlex itself is in ruins. The whole place is a ruin. The giant Freddy statue from the lobby is destroyed and there's rubble everywhere. There are still some questions, of course, like it is just an illustration after all. How's the rest of the PizzaPlex doing, for instance? What happened to the other animatronics? What's the main goal of this DLC? But while the latter may have been answered thanks to another detail from the poster, I don't think we'll have any answers for a while. The DLC doesn't come out until next year, which is absolutely insane, but at least it's free. And at 4, eyes. And while Gregory's eyes may be robotic, there's another set that I would like to point out in this Security Breach Ruins poster. The red eyes in the top left corner of the screen. Now, this is very clearly Vanny, but since I've seen a few people get confused by this, let me explain why. The eyes are red, which we only really see Vanny have, since BurnTrap's eyes glow purple, and the animatronic eyes don't really glow. We also know that Vanny might have been able to survive the collapse due to her being controlled by Afton, but also because she was able to be on the roof before us when the fire starts in the rooftop ending. I mean, she gets pushed off the roof by Freddy, but we know that she was up there before us somehow, so I'm sure that she would have found a way around a collapse. Plus, if she's on the security cameras and the other showcased person is Gregory, who we know is alive, it just makes sense for Vanny to be alive. Plus again, red eyes. And they're in a similar position to where Vanny was placed in her first poster appearance as the Shadow. You know, like the one where Freddy's rocking out and then there's like a bunny chick with a knife that we were like, who's that? Yeah, it's in roughly the same area. It's not in the same place exactly, but it's in the same vicinity. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, busted Chica. Now, when I make jokes about rearranging Chica's guts, this is not what I meant. Yes, that's right, my main girl Chica also makes an appearance on this poster as probably the most resilient animatronic in the group, because she's still kicking, despite being crushed by a trash compactor and then a building, and still having most of her smoking hot bod. Some of it was removed and cracked, but her face also has seemingly melted due to possibly the fire we were using to kill BurnTrap, or maybe just because a fire started in the kitchen when the building collapsed. She's also lost the lower half of her left arm, her left, not your left, remember that, don't make my mistake, and she's also lost her right leg warmer. The casing for her midriff and her right arm is gone, but other than that, she's fairly intact, at least compared to Monty. Also, interestingly enough, only Chica's white face melted, meaning that it looks like someone, spilt frosting all over her face. I guess that takes the term busted to a whole new level. But ultimately, in at number 2, Help Me. Very reminiscent of the Save Them minigame from the earlier FNAF games. I'm pretty sure it's FNAF 2. You can see Gregory's face on the bottom left monitor with the phrase "Help Me" underscore written in green lettering. This seems to me to indicate that we may have a potential plot idea brewing where we need to save Gregory and Freddy after the collapse of the PizzaPlex, but we know that Gregory and Freddy sit on the hill in the final shot alone in the true ending, meaning that if we do end up having to save him, our player character will most likely die in the process. This also means that we will not be playing as Gregory, but more on that in a moment. The underscore here could also be another indication of Gregory being a robot, but it could also potentially just be a reference to a file within the main game or within the DLC that could contain some secret information. But I have no idea if that's true, that's just speculation for the time being. I'm gonna have to look in through the actual Security Breach game files before the game comes out to see if there was an update that added one of those files, since underscores are primarily used for putting spaces in file names without actually needing spaces. Or it just could be that we need help in this case. Finally, in at number 1, Blondie. We do also see a new character on this poster, one we have never seen before. The little blonde girl holding the flashlight that is illuminating this entire scene. She's short, blonde, and wearing light up Skechers like the girl boss she is. But she is also presumably our player character given that she is front and center. Now, as to whether we are looking for Gregory or if Gregory is looking for us is one thing, but I have a slightly wild idea that could help explain. The pigtails is very reminiscent of Baby, but this girl has blonde hair. And while we may not be able to see her face, I think that she may also have green eyes, because anyone with blonde hair makes me instantly think of Elizabeth Afton, who gets grabbed by Baby in 1983 and goes on to possess the animatronic. Now, given that we've made the comparisons of Gregory to Crying Child in the past, and the very familiar nature of this blonde girl, I think I have a reason why all these children have gone missing. Because they look like the original Afton children. Think about it. This girl looks a lot like the middle silhouette from the original Missing Children's article in The Worst Ending for Security Breach, and the rest of these children look similar to each other, at least using their silhouettes, because that's all we really have. Plus, look at her light up Skechers, okay? Red and purple lights. I'm sorry, but when have we seen purple and it hasn't been an indication of Afton? Plus, the red is exactly like Vanny's eyes. This has to be one of the 9 missing children, right? That got released thanks to the collapse of the PizzaPlex? Like, come on. That has to be it. That's all the time we have for today, friends. Be sure you let me know your thoughts and feelings about this down below, because I want to hear your security breach ruin theories, okay? I need them. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you all so much for watching. I have been in Shower Main Connor Monroe, and I'll see you in another video.